Hi, it's Heather. And before we dive into today's conversation, I wanted to take a quick moment to share a story with you, if you don't mind. Recently, I was in Portugal, and it was only my second time in Europe. 2 years ago, on my first trip, I experienced a moment of what can only be described as pure shame and humiliation. There was this cool place in Italy where people hiked around the coast in this pretty and picturesque setting. And, well, I couldn't do the hike. It was above my capability. It was outside my comfort zone, and I had to call it. I felt awful. I was so embarrassed. And me being me, well, of surprise to no one, I cried. I thought about that moment a lot and how I promised myself if I ever had the opportunity, I would take a do over someday. And once Portugal was planned and on the books, I worked really hard on my physical health. I had been indoor rowing and doing strength training, and I felt more prepared and more capable. And I was more capable, at least initially. And then the hike started getting crowded. We were on a narrow path with a gazillion stairs, and this time what got me was the traffic in both directions with an open mountainside next to me. I hadn't prepared for that part. I was doing all the stairs just fine, but going downstairs, feeling like I couldn't see where my next step was because I had a mountain cliff on one side and people squeezing in on me on the other, well, it really shot my confidence. I got totally wigged out, and all I could think was, shit, it's happening again. I'm going to embarrass myself again. And for what felt like way too many minutes, I was trying to white knuckle my way through, not admit my fear, not admit my weakness, not give anything away. And all that did was make it so much harder. You all might have guessed by now that I am a talker. I talk, 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 and that is how I figure things out. So I did what I do. I got all Heather about it, and I said the hairy, scary part out loud. Guys, I need your help. The traffic on both sides is freaking me out, and I'm losing confidence. Can you help? The support, it was immediate. The acceptance, immediate. The assurance, immediate. When you ask for help and are met with support instead of shame or self-blame, well, in my case, friends, you get to see waterfalls, a lot of them. So many waterfalls because I spoke to my experience, I asked for help, and I got it. Right then and there, I changed the ending to my own story. And in that, I cannot think of a better way than that to tell you with all the pride and enthusiasm I have in the world that Thursday group is now officially open to support you in your healing journey. Like its sister Tuesday group, Thursday group is also a drop-in style group that's designed to offer you help, support, and a witness on your healing journey. Because that is what group does, friends. It helps you rewrite the ending to your story and allows you to start turning the pages toward a new chapter. You're going to find a link to sign up for both Tuesday group and Thursday group in the show notes. And now, on to mayhem.
Today on Mother Mayhem.
And that's the hard part, isn't it? Accepting the truth about your relationship with your mom is gut-wrenching. It's looking at the ways you were treated, acknowledging the harm done, and realizing that it is okay to name it. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and today I want to start with an important reminder. Before you ever clicked play on the first episode, an algorithm likely put this show in front of you, or maybe went searching for a show like this. I know myself pretty well by now, and while I am many things, a good marketer isn't one of them. So I know this show is hard to find. I rely heavily on search engine optimization for discoverability. And if you found Mayhem paused at the title, the cover art, or the description, then at some point you were probably asking yourselves, what is wrong with my mother? Why does my mother hate me? How do you deal with a toxic mother? Is my mother crazy? What do I do about toxic families? You might have searched any number of things, but here's what I already know. If you clicked on this show with this name, unless you're someone who simply enjoys trauma drama as a form of entertainment, you have a hurting place in your heart. And the only thing you may know for sure is that it is somehow connected to your mother. Pressing play on this show, well, it isn't easy. It is not easy to start a conversation like this. But if you have pressed play for the first time or the 95th time, I promise you that you belong here. Mayhem is definitely a club that no one asks to join, but this is a space and a community that sees you, and we already believe you. So, why am I starting this episode like it's a TED Talk? Because trauma brain. It is a sneaky little thing. And when it takes over, it can have you second guessing whether a show like this even applies to you. And that's when the doubts creep in. A show about mother wounds, the hurts your mom caused, and the ways past wounds still affect you can bring up so many emotions. And then guilt and shame set in. You start telling yourself, it's not that bad. Other people had it so much worse. My story doesn't compare. Or you find yourself reminding yourself that your mother had her own trauma and that she didn't know how to be a good mom because of her own mom's behavior. You might find yourself in a loop of, I should be more grateful because you had a roof over your head. You weren't hungry. You could play an instrument. And all that inner critic stuff has you second guessing whether your hurt is real, whether it counts, or whether it's enough to be considered trauma. For so many of you, this loop is painful and endless, leaving you questioning your experiences. And it makes sense to me, not because I think you're wrong for naming those experiences, because this loop is a part of the healing and recovery journey. It's normal. The tech world would call this an expected outcome. When you're first considering your trauma, it is common to doubt or minimize it. The bad news is, yes, this is trauma. And yes, unfortunately, you do belong here. But the good news is that this is just one part of the healing process. We don't have to keep you stuck at the am I crazy part of this cycle. We can get you out. Today, you're going to meet Julia. And because this is a podcast, I want to be clear that Julia is spelled Giulia. It's actually the name of one of my most favorite restaurants back when I lived in Massachusetts. So if any of you are near Porter Square, Cambridge, Mass., get yourself there for some amazing Italian food and really incredible service. And I will be totally jealous if you do. The restaurant's run by a husband and wife team who were inspired by a street in Italy named Giulia when they decided to open their restaurant in the States. You guys probably know by now that I am a sucker for names. Like book covers, I'll pick a place just for the cool name or the story behind it. Fun side note on that one, that is how I ended up at a place called the Prohibition Pig in Vermont. A name like that, well, it had to be good. So if you're ever in Vermont and you want some good barbecue, look it up. But enough about food. Let's get back to our daughter, Julia, and her question. Hi, Heather. I think that I might be a daughter, but I'm not quite sure. Can you please consider a podcast episode focused on how to tell? Related, or perhaps the subject of another episode to consider, can you please address the maddening, endless mental cycle that is, I think I might be a daughter. Then I feel guilty and shameful for even thinking that way, as if I'm some sort of victim and deserve a pity party. Why am I such a monster? Then I wonder that if I feel such self-loathing for even thinking that way, is that one more reason why I think I might be a daughter? And there the cycle repeats. On the outside, I appear to have my shit together. On the inside, I am a mad mess. My brain ever churning this way. Thank you for your podcast. From a mom, married, attorney, mid 40s, maybe a daughter, most certainly a mess. Oh my gosh, Julia, I adored the open honesty and transparency in your note here. It is how you ended up with your name. I asked myself what other things I happen to adore, and thus your name came to mind. And I hope you heard everything I said at the beginning of this episode. If you have clicked on a show about mother wounds, it is most likely because you have one. And there's a part of you that knows that. The cycle you're describing, thinking you might be a daughter, feeling guilt and shame for even considering it, and then wondering if the self-loathing is part of why you think that way, that is exactly the kind of loop trauma brain gets stuck in. And it is maddening, and I know this, but let's break it down and give it some context. First, there's a part of you that feels like wise mind, and it is that grounded part of you that knows deep down that something isn't right with your relationship with your mother. Wise mind knows that you might be experiencing the effects of emotional abuse or neglect. This part of you can look at the situation objectively and say, yes, this is likely the result of something unhealthy or toxic. Then there's trauma brain. That's the part of you that is steeped in the pain and in the survival instincts of those past experiences. This is the part of you that's influenced by guilt, shame, and a deep sense of not being allowed to feel what you feel. Trauma brain questions your wise mind. It makes you feel small and convinces you that you do not deserve to acknowledge the hurt. Trauma brain is the one that whispers, you don't deserve to feel this way. Why are you being such a monster for even thinking this? The truth is, these two parts of yourself are often at odds. Wise mind can look at the facts and say, it's okay to recognize that something was wrong, while trauma brain counters with emotional overwhelm, self-doubt, and shame, creating that endless cycle you find yourself stuck in. This cycle can feel never ending, and honestly, it can be exhausting. You are at a critical juncture in the healing process where your wise mind is trying to step forward, but trauma brain is still holding on to all of those old patterns. The healing work is learning how to separate these voices. in recognizing trauma brain for what it is, which is the survival brain, and trusting your wise mind to lead you through that uncertainty. And I get it. The guilt and shame you feel for even asking the question is another layer of the trauma cycle and makes you question whether you're being too sensitive or if you're somehow wrong for feeling hurt by your mom. But this is exactly what so many daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers go through. It's trauma brain that makes it so hard to separate what is real from what is the brain's learned coping mechanism. But the truth is, the very fact that you're questioning and feeling guilt shows that you are actually in a process of growth. It is normal to wrestle with these feelings. And a part of healing is learning to sit with the discomfort of that uncertainty while you are working to reframe your own narrative. And when you say that on the outside you appear to have your shit together, but on the inside you're a mess, that is also quite common. There is this dissonance that many daughters experience when they've been taught to appear fine while their internal world remains in total chaos. It's as if you trained for this your whole life. This tension between that outward version of you and that inward version of you, it feels like a burden because you are learning to integrate your inner world and your outer world so that you don't have to keep pretending. You belong here because your voice, your experience, and your growth matter and they're important. A daughter in our community, well, she recently encouraged me to stop being so self deprecating and apologetic when I am explaining the psychobabble of it all. And I am going to take her up on that suggestion and unapologetically name that I am about to share some psychobabble with you. So here goes. When we talk about trauma brain, it is important to know that what you are experiencing isn't just emotional, it's actually physiological. Your brain and your body have adapted to a survival mode based on years of manipulation and emotional neglect. The guilt, the shame, the self doubt you feel aren't just these abstract feelings. They're hardwired responses from your brain trying to protect you. Your brain has your back, has all of your parts, but the way it keeps you safe is tricky here. Your brain learned early on how to cope with your mom's behavior, often by suppressing your feelings or convincing you that your pain wasn't valid. This is what we call dissociation, or in another psychobabble phrase you might have heard, cognitive dissonance. On one hand, your wise mind knows that something wasn't right. But trauma brain has been trained to minimize, to rationalize, or to even deny that pain. And that's often because it's a way of avoiding further emotional hurt or punishment. And this inner tug of war is exhausting. And it can feel like your brain is constantly at war with itself. And this is why I now have to introduce you to your nervous system. Here's what's happening for you. When you feel guilt or shame, what you're actually feeling is your nervous system trying to keep you safe. Trauma activates your fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses. That makes you feel like you're constantly in danger even if you're not. In moments of doubt, of shame, or confusion, Your body is essentially reverting to those old survival instincts that told you to stay quiet, to stay small, to hide your pain. These survival strategies were at one point in time, as we know, necessary. But now you're starting to figure out that they aren't serving you in the ways that they used to. Healing can be defined and explained in a lot of different ways, which is part of why it makes it so messy and can make it feel so unclear. For me, I've recently started to define healing as the point where your nervous system feels safe and you are consistently able to access self trust. Nervous system regulation is the key to feeling more grounded and more calm. It's what allows you to step out of that constant state of hyperarousal or numbing that trauma brain can pull you into. And as you practice tuning into your body, grounding yourself, and offering yourself compassion instead of judgment, you begin to reset that response. And it is hard, painstaking work. And honestly, it is a goddamn pain in the ass sometimes. Regulating your nervous system is not anything close to being pithy, sexy, or simple. It is laborious, and many will simply tell you it sucks. And honestly, I don't think they're wrong, because if healing were easy, everyone would be doing it, which is why you all hear me go on and on about the importance of self compassion. Not because I want to be blowing smoke up your behinds, but because when you are stuck in that loop of self criticism and self loathing, your trauma brain is telling you that you are unworthy of love and understanding. But here's what I have come to see and learn from you, daughters, over and over again. Self compassion is the antidote to the shame spiral. When you can start gently reframing your inner dialogue, offering yourselves the kindness you might offer a friend in the same situation, it begins to shift how your brain and your body react to past pain. Practicing self compassion is not, I promise you, about just letting yourself off the hook. It is about recognizing that your responses to your trauma were understandable. And when you can do this, you are able to unfreeze parts of yourself that have been locked in survival mode, that were locked into those 4 F's: the fight, the flight, the freeze, the fawn. Over time, this is going to be what gets you to move out of your trauma loop and into more self trust. And it might help to understand that this back and forth between trauma brain and wise mind is normal, because the brain is literally trying to recognize and reconcile with two opposing truths. Your wise mind can acknowledge the abuse and the pain, and your trauma brain wants to protect you from feeling the hurt by invalidating it. You're not crazy for doubting your experiences or for minimizing your pain. That is just your brain's way of managing an overwhelming situation. And as you heal, the tension will start to resolve. You will start to trust your wise mind more. And with it, you will start to trust that your experiences are valid. This takes time. Of course it does. But that is what healing is going to offer you. So that is the Cliff Notes version of how you got here. Now, next, Julia, and all of the other Julias listening in, wondering what's wrong with you, if you're crazy, or who are feeling disloyal, I have given this thing some thought. If I were to write a guidebook for you to know if you're a daughter, what would I say and how would I say it in such a way that doesn't sound like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but also how the heck do I say it in such a way that can compete with your trauma brains? Because, man, some of your trauma brains, I have been meeting them. I meet them in group. I meet them in Mayhem Daughters. I meet them in your emails, and they are loud and they're bitchy and they're annoying. And I have to at least be louder than them. But I'm also not above being bitchier or more annoying if I have to be. So here goes. Here's how I think we tackle this. The first step is recognizing the signs of having grown up with a narcissistic or emotionally limited mom. And here are some common experiences and patterns that you are likely going to recognize and that will probably resonate with you. You feel like you're always walking on eggshells around your mom, and you're never quite sure how she'll react or what you might have to do to keep the peace. Your emotional needs were not consistently met. You were either ignored, invalidated, or made to feel like you were too much. There is a deep sense of guilt and shame around your feelings, and that often makes you question whether you have a right to feel hurt or whether your experiences even count as trauma. You might minimize or justify your mom's behavior to other people, even though deep down you know something was wrong. You probably struggle with boundaries, either because you're too compliant or feeling extreme anger and resentment when boundaries are crossed. You often feel like a burden or that you're too sensitive or you're too much for wanting or needing basic emotional support. This is the first step in validating your experiences. And we tell and name the truth here at Mayhem. We name and say what your mothers did and how they hurt you. And in your note, Julia, I don't think you were ready to go there. And I know that's true for a lot of daughters. So I went there for you. First up, you may have experienced emotional manipulation, or what we call gaslighting. She may have made you feel like your emotions weren't valid, often dismissing or belittling your feelings. You were likely told things like you're too sensitive, you're overreacting, leaving you to question if what you were feeling was justified. And she probably twists situations to make you doubt your reality. And she probably says things like, that's not what happened. You're remembering it wrong. This is gaslighting. She might deny the things that happened. She might twist your words, make you feel like your emotions are irrational or invalid. And this leaves you feeling confused, questioning your memory, and as you've experienced, often leaves you feeling guilty or crazy for having the feelings that you do. Another way to clearly tell that your mom was narcissistic or emotionally limited is that her love and being loved by her often felt confusing instead of secure. Her affection or her attention was given only when you met certain expectations, leaving you to feel like you had to earn her love or her approval. You may have experienced frequent emotional withdrawal or coldness when you didn't meet her demands. And of course, that might lead to feelings of insecurity or inadequacy. And you likely experience neglect or emotional unavailability. Your needs were consistently unmet, whether it was through a lack of empathy, support, constant criticism, or emotional neglect. She might have been emotionally distant or preoccupied, leaving you to fend for yourself emotionally. And she likely exhibited over controlling behavior. She may have micromanaged your life, telling you how to think, to feel, or behave, or not think, not feel, not behave. And she did that, and in doing so, often dismissed your autonomy. There likely was little room for you to express yourself freely, and her control often went beyond what felt protective into something that probably felt suffocating or invalidating. And then she probably did some blame shifting or playing the victim. When things went wrong, she made it your fault and never took responsibility for her actions. She might have turned situations around to make herself the victim, leaving you feeling guilty or responsible for her emotions and her well being. Then we've got triangulation and favoritism. She pitted you against other family members, including siblings perhaps, and created competition for her attention, her affection, or her approval. She might have compared you to others in a way that made you feel inadequate or less than, often highlighting your flaws while praising other people. And in all likelihood, she displayed an abundant lack of empathy or any kind of acknowledgement of your pain. When you were upset or in pain, she may have ignored or minimized your feelings, offering little to no support or comfort. She didn't seem to care about your emotional experience, or might have even accused you of being selfish for feeling the way you did. Then there was likely some chronic criticism, or perhaps some devaluation. No matter how hard you tried or how much you achieved, it was never enough. You were constantly criticized, and any praise you received likely felt hollow, sincere, or like you were going to pay that debt at some point for it. Your accomplishments were likely downplayed or dismissed outright altogether, and you were made to feel like you were always falling short. Then, in order to achieve all of this and be successful at it, she needed to undermine your boundaries. When you tried to set boundaries, she ignored or disrespected them, making you feel like you had no right to say no. You were expected to always put her needs first, and your personal space, both emotional and physical, was often violated. And as you hear me say all of this, I can hear the check, check, check you are all making in recognition. And I do know the hurt, the weight, and the pain of each story behind each of those checks and what they hold for you. And also, I have to admit, I would feel like a real asshole if this is where I left you, sitting in your pile of checks and shit, because at the heart of your question, Julia, you aren't just asking, how do I know if I'm a daughter? You were asking, how do I accept that I'm a daughter? And that's the hard part, isn't it? Accepting the truth about your relationship with your mom is gut wrenching. It's looking at the ways you were treated, acknowledging the harm done, and realizing that it is okay to name it. But here's the thing, you can't heal what you won't admit to. to start accepting this, you do need to do a few things. You have to learn to acknowledge your reality without guilt. Stop minimizing your pain. This is probably going to be one of the hardest steps for you, but you have got to stop brushing it off or telling yourself that it wasn't that bad or that other people have it worse. Your pain is valid and it doesn't need to be compared to anyone else's to be worthy of your attention or of your care. Then we have to work on helping you separate your worth from her behavior. The truth about being a daughter is that it is not about what you did wrong. It is about what has been done to you. The way your mother treated you wasn't a reflection of who you are. It was a reflection of her emotional limitations. And accepting this means understanding that you are not responsible for her actions. And you are not and were not bad for being hurt by them. And then, Julia, and everybody listening, you have got to give yourselves permission to feel whatever it is you feel. If you're still stuck in guilt or shame about being a daughter, it's because you have been taught to feel bad about your feelings. Give yourselves permission to feel hurt, to feel betrayed, angry, confused. Healing begins with allowing yourselves to fully feel without judgment. You don't have to fix how you feel right now. Then we work with you to reframe the victim narrative. And I get it. Nobody wants to label themselves as a victim. But this isn't about staying stuck in the victim mindset. Accepting that you're a daughter means acknowledging the truth of your experience, but it doesn't mean saying that you're helpless. This is where your power begins. You get to choose what healing looks like for you, but it starts with acceptance. And then we honor and respect your journey of growth. You have got to remember that healing, as annoying as this is to hear, really is a process. You're not going to wake up one day and suddenly magically feel healed or at peace with everything. It's okay to take some time with this. It's like that annoying walk in the forest analogy. It's one my own therapist used on me when I asked her how much longer I was going to feel sad and depressed, and she would tell me that it took this long to walk in this far and this deep, and it was going to take me some time to walk out. Acceptance does not happen overnight, and it isn't linear. But by honoring where you're at now, without rushing it, without guilt, you will begin to move through this. You'll start to see that accepting that you're a daughter isn't actually about victimhood. It's about owning your truth and validating your experience. And I wish it could all start getting better for you once you're able to name that you're a daughter and acknowledge the way your mom hurt you. But, whew, deep breath, sisters, because I'm afraid there's more. Here's what I would suggest you do next. I would open your podcast app for this show, and I would scroll yourselves back all the way back to the very, very beginning. Admittedly, as you listen to the first episodes of this show, you will hear, hopefully, if I'm doing this right, that episode that, 95 episodes in, I've gotten better than I was back then. But even so, I did design those first episodes of the show intentionally. They are meant to be gone through slowly, deliberately, with intention, but in order and at a slower pace. They will offer you a frame for where and how to begin to heal. And as you heard me reference a little bit at the top of this show, since starting Mayhem, I have learned so much from you daughters, and I have really come to believe in my bones that healing happens in community. You are all living with relationship wounds, and healing should happen within relationships, with connection and with support. Many daughters will develop that lone wolf mentality where they tell themselves that they're going to go off and heal, and then they'll re enter society once they are healed. But it doesn't really work like that. Trauma, well, it wires you for protection and isolation. Healing wires you for connection. And we have several safe healing spaces for you available inside of Mayhem to support you while you heal. First up, we now have 2 weekly support drop-in group times available. Tuesday group meets noon PST, and now officially Thursday group is open, and Thursday group meets weekly at 3:30 PST. Group is a place where you can be seen, heard, and helped on your recovery journey, but you also know all too well that healing happens in your regular everyday too. When you feel a rush of emotion tending to your kids with a love you never experienced, or when you hear a relentless inner critic in your head that never shuts up, or in the moments you struggle with achieving calm and wonder if you'll ever find and keep peace, for those times, we offer Mayhem Daughters, our private online community for daughters. It is off social media, it's private, password protected, and we are always open and we're always accepting new members. You can find the links for everything in the show notes. All of you are in this community of women around the world who are managing this daughter experience together. And I, for sure, most definitely, am in it with you too. Bye for now. I do hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you have a question you'd like me to consider for the show, please do email me over at heather@daughtersnpd.com. You are always welcome to share your story or questions by recording yourself using the voice app on your phone. For best recording quality, please do record directly into your phone without using headphones or Bluetooth speakers. We're building an incredible community as well over on Instagram, and I'd love to see you over there too. You can find us at Daughters NPD. Lastly, if you love what you've been hearing here on Mayhem and have found the show helpful in your own trauma recovery, please do consider becoming a Mother Mayhem sponsor by purchasing simple scripts for saying hard things. It's a resource I created that provides the right words for the hard conversations, and it covers life, love, and work. You'll find a link for that in the show notes. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, please do share the show with her. Your reviews and social shares help spread the word, and I hope you'll consider doing so. Special thanks to Heather Clark for editing the show. She's in my head and knows what I meant to say when the words come out backwards. Thanks so much for your time today. As always, I'm in it with you. Bye for now.